215, the Compassionate Use Act. This authorized the very limited use of marijuana for certain medical purposes. Now, in the run-up to the vote, there were 3 presidents that actually came to California to lobby against this. Now, of course, they were giving the message of like, oh, you know, this is dangerous, this helps fund terrorists, only criminal enterprises want to sell a plant, what about the children, who's going to build the roads? Oh, it's stupid, stupid, stupid arguments. But one of the things that they said over and over, though, was basically you can't do this. Even if you want to vote for this, you can't. Why? Because supremacy clause. They said that the Controlled Substances Act, which shouldn't exist, says that federal law makes marijuana illegal no matter what your doctor may say or what your business person next to you may say. Marijuana is always illegal, so because of the federal supremacy clause, if you vote for this, the feds are just going to come in and sue you and shut you down, so don't waste your time. It's an unwinnable lawsuit. Well, guess what? We all know that marketing campaign did not work out too well. And voters in California approved Prop 215 anyways. Now, just after that happened, how did the Clinton administration respond? Here's a statement from Janet Reno in early December '96. Quote, "We want to make clear that federal law still applies." If you're ever wondering where Jeff Sessions gets his sound bites, it's from Janet, because they sound exactly the same. A few weeks later, in early '97, the LA Times came out with a report. They were talking to federal officials who, quote, vowed to pursue California physicians who recommend marijuana for their patients. They were going to take licenses from doctors. They were going to put them in jail, possibly. And they did do a lot of raids and arrests. But the threats from the Clinton administration did not stop people, individuals, and businesses in California or other states for that matter. And by the end of his term, there were 7 states that had legalized marijuana, even though the feds said that you can't do this because supremacy clause. Going forward, George Bush comes in and he ramps things up big time. He really held that the supremacy clause, federal supremacy, was going to rule over everybody. They conducted about 200 marijuana raids in the states in his 2 terms. 200. This is massive. Clinton was around 50 or so in 1 term. Bush went really intense. And in fact, in 2005, the Supreme Court actually backed him up in a very famous case known as Gonzalez versus Raich. Everyone here knows who Angel Raich is, right? Oh, crap. Angel Raich is a modern, living hero. I'll give a quick side story. She lives in Northern California. She has a giant, inoperable tumor in her brain. She is going to die from this tumor in her brain. Her doctor in Northern California said, you know what? You should treat this with cannabis. Let's try it. Maybe it'll help your appetite issues, your anxiety issues, whatever. But as we are learning more and more, and I'm not a scientist, but there are some research today that now says THC helps eat cancer cells. So they said, treat it with this. So her and her friend Diane, who was her caregiver, decided to grow 6 marijuana plants in Diane's backyard. 6. So what did the DEA do? What government always does. They call up their buddies in the Butte County Sheriff's Department in Northern California who said, oh, federal partners, we'll gladly help you out. And I don't know how long they took to do the investigation, but they raided Diane's home where those 6 pot plants were. And they destroyed them. Now think about this. Here's a woman dying from brain cancer, probably sitting there saying, Sheriff, Mr. DEA agent, I'm dying. My doctor says I need can I have 1 plant? What are they doing? Like, well, the supremacy clause doesn't care about your cancer, lady. I mean, it's disgusting. If that does not describe the nature of government power, I don't know what does. Now, they decided to sue. Diane and Angel sued. They sued the federal government. I figured, like, looking back on it, they should have sued the Butte County Sheriff's Department. But it went all the way to the Supreme Court, where Angel's doctor testified under oath that if she did not have access to cannabis, her life was at risk. In response, what does the Supreme Court do? Under the heroic leadership of the conservative icon Justice Scalia, the nasty Supreme Court held that growing 6 plants in your backyard, never buying or selling them, never crossing state lines with them, and consuming them in your own home counted as interstate commerce, that the federal government could not only regulate, control, prohibit, but also raid and steal and destroy. Now, Angel, actually in the run-up to this Supreme Court case, she had actually put out some statements basically saying like, look, if I lose this thing, I'm going to Canada, right? A lot of people say that. She's a lefty. Canada's great for them, I guess. But she was going to do that. And somewhere along the way, a little spark got into her. And after she lost, I'm not sure if it was the day after or the same day, but she gave a speech, I believe it was actually on the steps of the Supreme Court, that said, you know what? The Supreme Court made their decision, but I need to continue treating myself for my own health, no matter what these people say. Which is why she's a hero. Now, all of this Bush administration raiding 200 raids around the states, the Supreme Court win on his side, it also did not slow down the trend, but didn't stop the trend. It slowed it a bit, but it did not stop the trend in the states either. At the end of Clinton's term, there were 7 states defying the feds on weed. At the end of Bush's 2 terms, there were 13. From there, we have Barack Obama, who ramped it up even further. Now, I know propaganda in this country is extremely strong, and there are people from the Democrat and Republican side, boo, right, you guys can do that, boo. Boo. Well, both of those camps want you to believe that Barack Obama was soft on marijuana enforcement. This is total propaganda bullshit. It's a complete lie. In just Obama's first term, 1 term, his administration conducted more federal marijuana raids, about 270, and spent more money on federal marijuana enforcement measures than Bush and Clinton combined in their 3 terms. Obama was not soft on marijuana. Anybody here, who's here from Colorado? Okay, cool. We got a few Coloradans. Okay, it's a great country. Now, maybe you guys aren't aware, but about 5 weeks before recreational retail marijuana sales opened up for business in Colorado, I think it was January 1st, 2014, am I right? Does anyone, Colorado people, am I right? Yeah, we'll go with right. So January 2014, about 5 weeks before this, Thanksgiving of 2013, the Obama administration, with the help of local law enforcement in Colorado, conducted the largest series of marijuana raids in Colorado history, ever. This was a warning shot. Pundits were saying basically like, oh man, they can come in and shut this down whenever they want. I heard from a lot of people, oh man, you gotta have a standoff, you guys are screwed. Legalizing doesn't do anything. The long arm of the federal government is gonna shut this down. Well, even with Obama's heavy ramp up, with Bush's heavy ramp up, with the Supreme Court on their side, by the end of Obama's term, there were 29 states defying the federal government on pot. Last year, West Virginia became number 30. Earlier this year, Utah became 31. Very narrowly, they're going to vote on a broader medical marijuana bill, a ballot measure in November. And just last Tuesday, well, just this past Tuesday, a few days ago, the reddest of the red states, Oklahoma, just voted to approve the broadest medical marijuana law in American history. 32 states now defying Washington, D.C., even though the feds say no matter what, marijuana is illegal. And today in Colorado, that industry is $1.2 billion a year. But that doesn't even compare to what's happening in my country of California. So the medical industry in California for medical pot is a little over 20 years old now. And that industry is $2.8 billion a year, more than double the size of Colorado's supposedly massive industry. It's the largest cash crop in the state. They have more cash flowing into pot in California just for medical than grapes, almonds, and milk combined. It's huge. They expect recreational to hit about $5 billion a year by 2019, 2020. Retail sales for that just started very slowly earlier this year. Now, there are over 700 licenses for marijuana shops in the city of Los Angeles alone, where I live. About 400 for medical and 354 for recreational, and there are hundreds more that are operating illegally. In fact, just in February, there was a study done where they found 6,000 throughout the state marijuana dispensaries and delivery services that were all listed publicly on Weed Maps. If you have that app, that's how you find your product. 6,000 of them, but there were only 650 legal ones. So when I give you the legal numbers, the real market is much, much higher. So 700 currently in LA, hundreds more illegal. At its peak, there were about 1,700. There was a real study done. There were about 1,700 marijuana dispensaries in the city of Los Angeles alone. That's more than Starbucks and 7-Eleven combined. You go to New York City, the joke is always about how, like, oh man, there's a Starbucks here, and right across the street there's another Starbucks, or maybe back where I grew up in Wisconsin, there was a Target and then a Walmart. Well, in many neighborhoods in LA, weed shop, weed doctor. Mind you, it's all illegal under the federal law. We ran some numbers, Mike and I went through this a few years ago, and it would take, at least at that time, it's probably even worse now, more than 40% of the annual budget of the DEA just to investigate and raid the city of Los Angeles alone. And this does not count the cost of prosecution. So when you add in cities like Oakland, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Anchorage, Las Vegas, and all these others, Boston, that are defying the feds on this, they don't have a chance to shut it down. In fact, this is how I put it in a video that I made back in 2015. That's available at our table at the front for $10. Is that nice marketing? Quote, even in the face of increasing federal enforcement measures, the states and the people found the winning path. It's only a matter of time before they overwhelm federal enforcement capabilities completely, and the feds will have to act like they decided to drop the issue just to save face.